minutes to get here with their cookies. We are so glad you're here. I'd also like to join the folks I'd also like to thank the folks who are joining us via Zoom. We even have one of our program speakers who's going to be participating in the legislative update via Zoom. So we still are very grateful that we have that technology that we can choose to participate remotely, even when COVID is in the rear view mirror. If you're a first-time guest or a visitor today, please consider joining us. We are a very active, fun organization, and we pride ourselves in getting a lot done, not only locally, but throughout the state of Colorado, and we work really hard to have an impact at the national level too. The program you signed up for today is a preview of the 2024 legislative session. We're very fortunate in that we're going to get a close-up, behind-the-scenes preview look at what our illustrious Senate and House representatives have planned for the 2024 session. We have five representatives here in person today. And as I mentioned, one of our representatives is going to be joining us remotely. And I will introduce all those people right before we kick off the conversation up here on the stage. In addition to our Boulder County elected representatives, we have some August elected guests and candidates. And when I call your name, would you please be so kind as to stand up and wave your arm so we can make some connection between faces and names. First of all, we have Kathy Gebhardt here. She's the Boulder Valley School Board President. Kathy, can you stand up? All right, Kathy. Kathy is also a candidate for the State Board of Education. And she probably won't be so crass as to ask for your vote today, but I will vote for Kathy. We also have Tina Marquise, who's behind me here, staffing the computer, and she is one of our newest Boulder City Council representatives. Okay, we also have a candidate here for House District 10, Tina Meow. 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 It's great to have you here, Tina. And last but not least, we've got Jovita Schiffer, candidate for Senate District 18. Where are you? All right. It's probably here. Has anybody been unfortunately overlooked or not mentioned? We want to make sure you're all recognized for not only your current service, but your willingness to consider providing service in the future. Everybody's good? Okay. Who's yelling? Who is that? TD, stand up, Lynn. Sorry, Lynn. Okay. Now we have a few housekeeping items. And this first one is really important because unless you've heard previously, we're going to move to Zoom for our January, February, and March meetings. I know you all love to come here to the Avalon and do the cha-cha and the fox when nobody's looking. We're going to do it via Zoom. So you'll be getting more information about that in your emails. We're also still selling the No Burt shirts at the back of the table, back of the room, at the registration table. And I think they're $20 and there are a few left. Another item for housekeeping today. We'd like to encourage you to visit a table at the back of the room that's staffed by Ellen Marshall from COPE. Where are you, Ellen? Can you? Oh, she's over here. Okay. Ellen is collecting signatures for Initiative 89. And as you know, that's the initiative that will enshrine abortion and other reproductive rights in Colorado in our institution. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for being here. Lisa Lesniak wants me to remind you to help keep our organization strong. We'd like to encourage you to renew your membership, maybe advance to the next support level. And if you want to join our team that puts on these programs or staff's tables at various community events, we'd love to have you. And last but not least, thank you everyone for bringing a wonderful array of cookies over there. Okay, before we move to the program, here's a pop quiz. What are the 3 pillars of the Dem Women of Boulder County's mission? And you can just shout it out. What are the 3 pillars that drive our efforts and commitment? I'm sorry, say that again. Education, that's right. Number 1, education. Engagement, all right. Education and engagement. And what is the last one? Eating. Does begin with another pillar if you included eating, yes. It's the most obvious one because of the people that are here today. What did we do? We got them elected. We helped to get them elected, right? The 3 pillars of the DWBC mission are educate, engage, and elect. And so I'm really pleased to present some outstanding individuals today that we helped elect. We elevated them to the legislature to carry our progressive ideals and values to representative bodies where policy and laws are enacted in the spirit of improving people's lives and protecting our planet. So today it gives me great pleasure to introduce some Democratic leaders that we all collectively have helped to elect. Okay, I'm going to introduce our Senate folks first. We have Steve Fenberg, Senator from District 8. Steve, we have Sonia Yakuz Lewis. She's State Senator, Senate District 17. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce the House people. We have Junie Joseph. She's representing House District 10. She's participating via Zoom. We have Karen McCormick from House District 11 here today. I feel like let's make a deal. Come on down. Let's see. I've got Judy Amabile. She's our current House District 49 representative for the Senate. And we've got Kyle Brown. He's from House District 12 from Superior. Come on down. Excuse me. That's all. Yeah, I'm not gonna be, I'm gonna give it all to you. Yes. Okay, so everybody's got a place. Good. Okay, I'm gonna explain the ground rules here. We're so excited to have all these people here, but sadly, we can only give them about 4 minutes to speak individually and bring us up to date on what they have planned. if you have a question, and you probably will while they're telling us what's on their agenda, then I'm going to encourage you to raise your hand, and Joanna Clark here will bring around a little note card. You can write down your question and then hand it back to her, and we will entertain your questions when the presentation is over. Let's see, any questions? Okay, good. Then I'm going to start with Steve. Any question about the floor mat? Okay, who has a question? Oh, okay. Joanna's going to hand out cards. Yeah, they are. Okay, so we'll start with Steve. Will you have a microphone? And you are going to being our senator from District 18, you were also the senator, the president of the Senate. So we're really thrilled to have all of you today.
Thank you all so much for being here and for inviting us. This is probably, well, Tina, okay, yeah, that's it. Maybe it's just need to speak closer to it. It's probably this is certainly my last legislative preview for Deaf Women as a state senator. First of all, I just want to say thank you for all of the support and that you've provided all of us, for me especially over the last 7+ years. It's great to always be with all of you, and thanks again for all of your support and work. This is going to be an interesting session because, as they all are, but it feels like we just finished, and in fact we did. We had a special session, many of you probably noticed, just a little while ago, and so it sort of was a bit of a bump in the road when it came to our interim and our planning, but I think it was insightful, and we got some good things done that we hopefully can put aside as we go into the normal January session. It's going to be a full session. Just a quick table setting to remind everybody on the scenario at the Capitol. We still have a Democratic trifecta, thanks to a lot of the work many of you here in this. We have a very, very healthy majority in the House. In fact, a supermajority in the House. We have close to a supermajority in the Senate, down just by one seat. So we have 23 Democrats out of 35 in the Senate. And then, of course, we have Governor Jared Polis as the governor as well. So we are going into this with yet again another strong Democratic presence through the legislative session, which runs from January through May. In terms of what's on the docket, there are a whole lot of things. I assume land use and big investments in transportation and conversations around behavioral health investments, and a lot of the topics that we have been discussing, debating over the last few years, I think will continue to be big marquee debates and items that we're discussing this year. But there are a couple of others that I think are going to be entering the conversation as well. One thing that several of us were talking about before the event is we are this year finally, I think certainly, and I actually just signed a pledge to do this, so I have to do it, to officially buy down the negative factor, the BS factor, to $0. This is something, essentially this is the running IOU of how much money we owe our public schools because we have not been meeting our constitutional obligations. We are finally in a place, we have done the planning, we have put money aside, we have forecasted, and our finances are in order where we can finally get that down to $0 and eliminate the budget stabilization factor. We wanted to make sure we did it in a way that was sustainable. We don't want to promise that we are getting rid of it, we all cheer, and then in 2 years, if there's a recession, we have to reopen it back up. So we are very confident that we're going to do that this year and hopefully never have to say the words budget stabilization factor ever again in Colorado. There's a few other things that I think are going to be big topics as well. I'm going to be working on many issues related to transportation as well as renewable energy investments. We have made huge investments and made a lot of progress over the last, frankly, a couple of decades when it comes to renewable energy. But we were sort of at the forefront of that. We were one of the first states to have community solar gardens. It's one of the first states to have a renewable portfolio standard. Many states across the country have actually caught up to us. And we are now probably middle of the pack on a lot of these things. We want to make sure that Colorado continues to be a leader and is at the forefront and is pushing the envelope on a lot of these issues on the transition to renewable energy for the utility grid, but also electric vehicles and making sure it's done in a just way that doesn't leave people behind. So there'll be a lot of conversations, a lot of bills around renewable energy investments. There are several other topics that I think many of my colleagues will be mentioning and going over. I think I'll leave it there for now. With one last thing, which is what I'll say is one of the big kind of topics for the session is going to be the budget. We have had a very healthy budget growth the last few years, partially because the economy is doing well, and partially because of all the federal funds that Congress thankfully has allocated for states. We are now at a place where a lot of those funds are no longer coming. Maybe some of them will be paying off for the long term, but we are at a place where we are going to have to tighten our belts a bit. And so one of the big themes that we're going to continue talking about with each other every single day of legislative session, when someone comes up with a great idea, the refrain you're often going to hear is, how are you going to pay for it? Because we're at a place now where we are getting ready to, we're talking about how great of an accomplishment it is to fully fund education. We're talking about, the great things that we've done over the last few years and wanting to continue them. But we're also talking about the fact that there are serious big investments that yet still need to be made. When it comes to education, we shouldn't just be funding education at the bare minimum, right? We should be going well above and beyond that. We should be making big investments in infrastructure, et cetera. But we're at the same time refunding almost $4 billion back to voters through TABOR. So that means in the legislature, at the Capitol, we are going to have to make some serious trade-offs and think about how to get our budget in a more sustainable path and live within our means until and if there is major financial and TABOR reforms down the road, which I think we'll be having those conversations as well this session. But I'll leave it there. I'm happy to answer questions and get more into the details and specific issues or topics people discuss.
Thanks, Steve. I just want to say before I start that it's really truly an honor to serve with President Fenberg in the Senate. We have done more things under his leadership in the 5 years that I have been a representative and a senator from Boulder County. We've done so many things that are really leading the country in many different issues, not only environmental, but healthcare and protecting folks, keeping our communities safe. So it really is an honor to work with you in the Senate. So I'm Sonia Hawkins Lewis. I represent Longmont, Lafayette, and Erie. Do any constituents here? Yay, we got a few. Perfect. I used to represent Louisville, and I know we've got a wonderful Louisville contingent here, but with redistricting, my district changed. I have been a member of DWBC since 2006, I think we figured out. So it's really an honor to be speaking with you, knowing how much hard work that we all do in our communities. This year is going to be a big year. I will spend just a couple minutes talking about my bills, but I wanted to share something else with you. I noticed for this last election that we are down in the Democratic Party in Eastern Boulder County. We are down many, many precinct organizers. In Lafayette alone, we have no area coordinator. We are down 10 spots as precinct organizers. In Erie, we have a half of an area coordinator, or we have another spot that's not filled. So I wanted to take this moment, if I can, to challenge you to think about, if you're not a precinct organizer and you know folks that live especially in Eastern Boulder County, Western Weld, the Erie part, we need you and we need your help finding people, because Boulder County and that area has to turn out a lot of votes to make sure that we keep Colorado blue. We have 18 seats in the Senate up. Steve doesn't have to worry about it anymore. I know he's going to be working hard though, but we need to hang on to the Colorado Senate because, as my colleagues from the House will tell you, if we don't hang on to the Senate, we are the red room of doom. That's where all the progressive ideas go to die. So, and speaking of that, as chair of Senate Local Government Housing Committee, I think you're going to see a big push on housing. We are in big trouble with affordable housing in Colorado. There's not a meeting that goes by in the district or in Denver where somebody says, you know, I wouldn't be able to buy my house now, or my son and daughter can't buy a house now. This is a big problem for us, for our workforce. So we've got to address it. I know I'll be working on a couple of bills myself, and I know my colleagues are too. I also happen to be a pharmacist in Colorado. I think I'm the only pharmacist that's ever served at the Capitol. And I know Representative Brown and I are going to be looking at some insurance transparency issues around health insurance, more work on prescription drugs to try to keep prescription drugs affordable, although that is a tough thing to do these days. And then I've made a commitment when I ran in 2018 to try to run a gun violence prevention bill every single year, and I've kept that promise. So this year, I'm working with Diffords, and I'm working with Representative Brown because it is actually his bill from Louisville that we are going to run to designate sensitive locations to be firearm free. So schools, campuses, parks, museums. Well, it is going to be a big push. I'm going to need all your help on it. I'll need leadership's help on it, but we can do it. We've done it in municipalities, and we need to do it. Enough is enough, right? I'll be working on local control of pesticides. It was actually a bill that President Fenberg ran, and then COVID hit, and we're going to try to bring that back to protect our environment, protect our kids, and protect our pollinators, because pesticides are a huge issue. It puts the management back into the hands of local government. And last but not least, well, I'm doing a wage theft bill that protects workers that aren't being paid properly. But last but not, thank you. Thanks, Tina. Appreciate that. I know you know what it is. And last but not least, we need to do more with climate change. President Fenberg mentioned it. I'm running a bill around what's happening with oil and gas, the forced pooling. If you have mineral rights, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, come see me after. And around what's happening, these ideas around carbon sequestration, what's going to happen to all the plug and abandoned wells. We had one explode last month, right? It had already been plugged. So we're going to be running a bill to try to tackle some of that. And it's desperately needed. So thank you so much for letting me speak with you, and thank you for all your support. Guess I'll put my blanket away for a minute. I don't know why I just get going. I'm Karen McCormick, so I represent Longmont House District 11. Anybody here from Longmont? Yay! And I just want to wish each and every one of you a happy holiday season, and thank you for coming out here today. It's fun to see all your faces and all the fun cookies. Thank you very much. I am looking forward in some respects to this next session, and also have some degree of anxiety about it as well. I am very hopeful. I think hope gets each and every one of us out of bed in the morning, and that's why I ended up running for office. I tend to be a general practitioner in office. I come from a veterinary background, and that's what I spent my career doing in general practice. And I've taken that same approach to the interests that I have at the General Assembly. So I'm the chair of the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, and I sit on the Health and Insurance Committee. And in those two arenas, the health and insurance space is one of the reasons I did run for office, to really focus on ways that we can choose policy decisions that help drive the cost of healthcare down and increase the accessibility to healthcare across our state, especially in our rural and frontier areas that are really, really hurting, and in the area of mental health, of course, too, where we don't have enough providers. Representative Brown and I just came from a session this morning at the Capitol, kind of learning about the whole entire healthcare system, which he knows well, and I'm still in the learning process after 3 years. It is incredibly complicated, and there's a whole lot of money wasted in the system, and we're not getting outcomes that we should expect with spending that much money. So on that front, one of the bills that I had last year with Representative Basenecker and Senator Hawkes Lewis is to have the CU School of Public Health do a deep dive into what it would take and what it would look like on a kind of granular level for us as a state to have a single payer, privately funded, I'm saying that wrong, publicly funded, privately delivered system, which means that the money that goes into the system goes to a central source that then pays that out to private providers. So your hospitals and your doctors certainly would all be working as they are now, but the payment system would really cut back on the red tape, the costs. And so years ago in 2019, I believe the School of Public Health came out with a study that looked at how much money we're spending on the system as it is right now, how much we might be able to save. This is more from a 60,000 foot view if we had this publicly funded system, and then kind of a blend of those two. And it was found that we could save a couple $2 billion if we went to a system that was publicly funded. So this study is really the next step in the process to gather the data that we need for if we were to be able to see that the savings are truly there, and we put this up to a ballot initiative yet again, we would be able to answer the questions that many of your neighbors and yourselves and I have on, how much would this cost? Or if I'm an employer, how would that look in my situation? And how would we set this up to make sure that it would stand? So that bill's coming back. I am also focused on water issues here in our state. I look forward to there was a drought task force this summer that is coming out with policy recommendations this Friday, actually. So I look forward to that report coming out and what we might need to be able to do to plan for the hotter and drier climate that we are in. We are encouraged to stop calling it a 20-year drought. This is just our new reality. And how do we best look to the future for Colorado with our increased population and our limited precious resource of water? I have a bill with Representative Brown where we are going to make sure that invertebrates are protected in our state. We are one of the few states that have failed to recognize bugs as animals, and go Bucks. And so we're both very excited about that, being scientists. So that I don't see a lot of resistance on that bill. And I am carrying a few bills in the veterinary workspace too, veterinary workforce issues, access to care for veterinary care. We've seen a real crunch in that sector as well, and there are some real positive things that we can be doing, and proud to be and honored to be the only veterinarian down there that happens to be in that space at this time, so that we can make sure we bring the best policies forward. So I'm readily available by email. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And I have 10 other bills, but I'm going to turn the mic over, and thank you again very much.
Hello, everyone. Good Good morning. My understanding is that I am next. Please let me know. I can see some of you on the screen. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me on the screen? Yes. Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. I wish I could be in person, but I couldn't make it here in person today because I am in California at a convening on early childhood. I just want to thank all of you for the opportunity and thank you to all the organizers for organizing this event. I'm really appreciative of the work of them women, and I appreciate what you stand for, which is education engagement in elect. I know that last year, as a new legislator, I invited you to the International Women's Day and you showed up in drove. So thank you for coming. Again, my name is Junie Joseph and I represent House District 10. Last year, with the support of all the people in this room, the legislators in this room, I passed 19 bills and I passed 5 of them in the environment. I also passed renters protection and many other bills. I could not have done it without you and your support. And I'm sorry if you were hearing noise because I'm not home. I don't have an office at this time. This coming session, I am working on many bills, but I will tell you only about the top 5. I'm working on a youth bill of rights for kids in DYS to codify the rule and processes of engagement. I'm working on a bilingual child care licensing, which requires the Department of Early Childhood to provide information into the 2 most prevalent languages, and Spanish being the top one. Creating the bilingual licensing unit to help Spanish speakers who want to be licensed. As you know, there is a childcare crisis around the nation, and as legislators, our job is to find the problems and trying to find the solutions with your support. The third bill is expanding the authority of the AG to protect the public from imminent endangerment, similar to the AG's authority around mobile homes. And I'm also working on AI electioneering, communication, notice, and a cause of action. And the 5th and my 6th bill, I'm still trying to figure out which one fits where. Free state park access for kids, for foster families, or the AG's operation of a DA's office. Again, I want to thank you for being a partner. And I also know that the Dems women are very active women, and our democracy depends on the work of women. I would appreciate your support in testifying on my bills, and I'm sorry about the noise that you're hearing. You can call me anytime. Many of you has my number at 720-432-6009. 720-432-6009. Also, currently, I heard some of us mention some of the committees. I am vice chair of finance. As you know, many of you know that the budget is the moral authority when it comes to any of the work that we do, right? The idea is that show me the budget and I'll tell you what you care about. And I know Boulder care deeply about the environment, you care deeply about housing, and you care deeply about protecting working families. And that's what I intend to do, continue to do as your state legislator in House District 10. I have one more committee actually, which I have been assigned to, but I'm told not to share at this time, to just wait for the news to come out. But just know that I'm fighting for you at the Capitol. And not only that, while I'm fighting for all these things, I will make sure that as part of my work, I'm not legislating out your local control. Thank you, and it is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you again.
Okay, I think I'm up. Is that right? Yes. Okay, I don't want to get out of line. That's not in this crowd. Change the screen. Okay, thank you. So, hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. we obviously really rely and appreciate all the work that Dem women do. And years ago, the first foray I had into political involvement was being on the board of Democratic Women of Boulder County. And it was really an honor to do it. And I got to do the programming. I did a few things that were a little bit controversial, and then they got somebody else to do the programming. But you know, it was a good run. And so we're going to be talking about what we are doing for the upcoming session. And I just want to talk about that in sort of categories of things. First, I was on 3 interim committees this interim. And those interim committees mostly are about the intersection of mental health and criminal justice, about how we operate our jails in Colorado, and about how we measure recidivism in our prisons and jails. And so there'll be several bills that I'll be on that are coming from those committees. And that's going to be really important work. I also have been very involved in the budget, like behind the scenes. So I sit at home and I listen to the budget hearings, and then I text the JBC members, ask this. What about this? That isn't enough. Or why don't you take that and do something slightly different with it? I have no idea if that's having any effect, but I think it might be. And one of the things that we're really trying to affect is how much money we're putting into mental health care, and how we're putting that money into mental health care so that we can actually make a change in what we're doing. Because similar to regular healthcare, we have been spending a lot of money and we've been doing all kinds of things, but the net effect isn't visible to the people in our communities, and we need to make sure that we get there. I've also been working on some housing stuff. I have been working on gun violence prevention, and I will be bringing a bill this session on gun violence prevention, not on doing gun violence. And I'm also going to be working on an energy bill with the Energy Office. And I know a lot of you here were interested in the community choice energy legislation that we were looking at. And unfortunately, that did not have a path to getting signed into law. And so we're going to keep working on that. And we're going to spend all of this session and then the interim, and hopefully bring back something next session that will address the skyrocketing costs of energy and how being under a monopoly affects our ability to negotiate for better prices. So those are the things that I'm looking forward to. I am the chair of the business committee, and we'll be looking at child labor laws and a whole bunch of other policies. I'll be running I hope be running the banking. It's really sexy, this banking sunset stuff. But it actually really matters, and it matters to the banking industry, but what we do matters also to all of you, because you are the consumers of that, and we have to make sure that we regulate that in a smart way. So there'll be several other things that are sunsetting this year that will come before the business committee. And as a perennial favorite, I mean, Kyle is the guy here, right? Who hasn't mentioned Kyle in their talk? But I'm also running some bills with Kyle, and they are about fire insurance and making sure that the future victims of these mass fire events, which we are sure to continue to have, get the protections that they are paying for. And I am also running for the state senate, and I appreciate all of you and your support. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. It is such a, I was thinking of someone when I was talking. I'm Kyle Brown. I represent District 12, which is Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, Gun Barrel, and Niwot. And I was saying to someone when I was walking in that, you know, how fortunate I feel to be a member of the Boulder County delegation and to have such amazing colleagues, that we all really work so well together. And as you can tell by the kind of sponsorship of each other's bills and how we work together. It is really a great group. So I feel really fortunate to be able to, as the newest member of the Boulder County delegation, I feel really fortunate to get to work with such amazing mentors and leaders. This may be Senator Thunberg's last Democratic woman of Boulder County legislator. This is my first. So to put a focus on, you really have to do with all of you. I think many of you know that I represent, along with Senator Thunberg and Senator Representative Mobley, they represent the area that was affected by the Marshall Fire. And a large portion of my legislative portfolio last year and going to be again this year will be addressing the lessons learned from the Marshall Fire. So along with Representative Mobley, I'm going to bring some different bills to try to address a couple of these issues. One of which is making sure that mortgage companies aren't holding on to people's insurance proceeds when they are able to settle with their insurance company. Another being making sure that people who are rebuilding their homes or retrofitting their homes have the choice to rebuild their homes in a fire hardened way, and that their HOAs or their covenants can't be a barrier to that. And so pleased to work with Representative Senator, I can't remember my titles mixed up, sorry. Senator Hawkins Lewis on that issue. A third that I've been very concerned about and heard from our community is around price gouging, specifically on rent. I've heard from people in Louisville who are paying $7,500 for a single family home or $5,000 for a small apartment. And it's clear that, just because the market will bear a particular price doesn't mean that it should. And so I would like to extend the same protections that we have for bottles of water, air conditioning after a natural disaster to renters. When we talk to people in the district, one of the first things that comes out of their mouth is we have to do something about climate, Kyle. So climate action will continue to be an important part of my portfolio. One of the things that I've been pursuing with another legislator from or from Greenwood Village is making sure that local governments have climate action plans. In many of our communities, Lafayette, Louisville, Superior, Boulder, around the county have these plans, and every community needs to do their part. And so I'm going to work to make sure that we can incentivize that in our local communities. I also want to make sure that our grid on an energy side, that our grid is the barrier to adding renewable energy, and that someone who decides to put solar panels on their house or a company that is looking to do a solar farm or a wind installation doesn't run into a barrier with Excel telling them that they need to upgrade the entire grid locally. So making sure that we have equity in how we are paying for grid upgrades so that we can continue to upgrade our infrastructure in ways that will be helpful. That's something that I have to work on in the climate space. We're really excited about one of the bills that Representative McCormick is running, but I'll tell you, one of those bills is really bugging me. So looking forward to that. These are going to be the jokes all session, guys. So get ready. Sorry, I have to look at my notes for a minute. Remember, make sure I didn't do anything else. Healthcare. So many of you know that I'm, healthcare is my background. Something I'm passionate about. This summer, we lost primary health plans in Colorado. 30,000 people had to choose a new health insurance plan because their insurance company went out of business. And what they found is that when they switched insurance companies, they had to pay their deductible again. That's not their fault. They shouldn't have to pay $8,000 or $10,000 in a deductible twice. So I'm running a bill to make sure that people don't get stuck with the bill when their insurance company goes out of business. I'm also running a bill. So we also talk about, the other thing that people talk about in our district, obviously, is Medicaid constraints. is housing, right? Affordable housing, many of my colleagues have touched on it. I'm pursuing the affordable housing conversation from a little bit of a different angle, which is that the federal government has put new money through our Medicaid program on the table that will fund transitional housing in particular. And so I'm going to run a bill this year, I hope to run a bill, will help to move our Medicaid department in the direction faster so that we can take advantage of these federal funds, which are now available, and provide up to 6 months of transitional housing for folks maybe suffering from homelessness. So those will be my priorities this year. Really, I'm so fortunate I'm really excited for my convention, obviously, with my colleagues. Senator Hawkins Lewis has been really gracious to let me on to her bill, and I'm really happy to be that. So I just want to say how much I really appreciate all of the work that the Democratic Women of Boulder County do. You all are an amazing organization, and I am so thankful to be with you, and look forward to seeing you down at the Capitol or in my district. Let's have coffee or whatever. So just give me a minute.
Okay, let's give all 6 of our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you all for being here. We have collected some great questions, and I'm going to try and pose them to you as time allows. I have, however, been reminded that this is a cookie exchange, which means you need to remember to get over there and grab your cookies. If you brought cookies and you want to take a comparable amount home, please help yourself. There's some really good looking cookies and brownies and other goodies over there. I don't have any kind of format in mind as to who answers these questions. So whoever is the lucky one or the last one to raise their hand, I guess you get to answer the question. But the first one is, what was determined about property tax relief? Who would like to go first?
All right, so good question. So on the ballot this past fall was HH. There's a whole context and history here, of course, but after Gallagher was taken out of the Constitution and we had skyrocketing home values after the pandemic, and as people were moving here and a shortage of housing, et cetera, we sort of had this perfect storm. And so we knew we needed to do something to put a more sustainable policy in place to address the property tax increases. On average, people were seeing a 40% increase in the property taxes this past year. I don't think that's going to continue necessarily at that pace, but it obviously is very difficult for a lot of folks who are fixed incomes, et cetera. So we actually passed several bills throughout the last couple of years to provide some temporary relief. But there was always this ongoing question of what are we going to do for the long term? What's the long-term sustainable, essentially replacement to Gallagher, which was in the Constitution? HH was something that we referred to the ballot for years. It didn't pass. Would have done a whole lot of things, and that's probably partially why it didn't pass, because it did too much. But one of the things is it provided some tax relief in different forms, but did it in a way that made sure that schools and local governments that were supported by property taxes essentially were made whole, especially schools and some of the other critical services like fire. That didn't pass, so now the governor called us back for a special session, which I referenced. We were there for 4 days, and we passed a couple of bills to provide some temporary relief again. So those bills essentially provide relief for this tax year, not past that. And the big thing that we did, the main bill, was we provided an exemption from your taxable value of your home. And it ended up being $55,000. So whatever the value of your home is that it was assessed at, that it's been taxed for, $55,000 will come off of that price. So that amount of money won't be taxed. So that'll have a reduction in people's property tax bills for the coming incoming bill that you'll get early next year. We also slightly reduced the assessment rate. That will have a larger impact for homes that are worth more. And then the previous thing that I mentioned, the $55,000 deduction, will have a larger impact for lower value homes. So we tried to sort of address it a little bit from both ends. But there still needs to be a long-term, more sustainable solution, because we can't afford as a state to do this forever. Because when we do it at the legislature, because Democrats are in control, we're not willing to do a tax cut and not pay for it, right? The Republicans and the Donald Trump White House, the George W. Bush White House, et cetera, that's what they did. They provided tax cuts largely to wealthy people, but then they didn't pay for it. And so that resulted in budget cuts. We weren't willing to do that. So we are backfilling the services, local governments, the schools, et cetera, because of this tax cut. We're not going to be able to afford to do that forever. So we need to figure out a sustainable path that gives more of this control to the local governments, to local districts, and allows voters to have more of a say in where their property taxes go, or how they go up in the future, and things like that. There's one of the bills that we passed in the special session was creating a bipartisan commission to study this and to provide recommendations to the legislature, and they will provide those recommendations probably in March. Hopefully, that will include legislation or even maybe another referred measure that has more buy-in from Republicans, Democrats, business community, and other folks that we can really get something done for the long term. So that's where it stands. We're excited about this commission. It's a whole diverse set of people from all over the state, from different backgrounds, and they will kick off, I think, next week. Is when they have their first meeting. So if you want to stay in touch on that, you can get information online at the General Assembly's website, or you can just wait till March and see what they came up with, because it might not be the most exciting meetings ever. But that's where we are. So you will get some property tax relief this year, and we're still working on what the long-term solution will be.
Thank you, Steve. Would anybody else want to add an addendum to that? Okay, good. This next question is kind of involved, but it's a hot topic, not only locally, statewide, and nationally. So I hope the person who submitted the question will be okay if I summarize. The gist of it is, what is the plan to address the ever-present and increasing issue of homelessness? Is there an idea on how to collaborate between nonprofits and government agencies to work out a solution? And Judy, all right, Judy.
They didn't all have to point at me, but I think they were thinking that. So, yeah, homelessness is intertwined with housing affordability and housing availability. But I think what we've seen here in Boulder and throughout the state is that housing first and housing only doesn't solve the problem. So we absolutely have to focus on getting people into care and into treatment. And we are waiting. We ran a bill last year that is a study about how do we do that? What are the resources that we need in our state that we currently don't have that would allow us to get somebody who's on the street who is clearly not able to take care of themselves and get them into the care that they need? And what is that going to cost? And how are we going to pay for that? And yes, it's a collaboration between nonprofits and government agencies and local governments and federal money. And we have had a lot of money come into our state, and we have spent a lot of our state money on solutions. And some of them are beginning to make a difference. So we are about to open up a campus just east of Denver that is going to have 250 beds for people who have substance misuse disorder, where they can go detox and do treatment and then spend up to 2 years at that facility getting into recovery. And we have a person here in Boulder who went through a program similar to that at Fort Lyon, who really swears by this as being the thing that is going to help people to recover. And I agree that is a really important level, but 250 beds isn't enough. And that program isn't right for everybody. And not only do we have to address substance use, but we also have to address this epidemic of mental health issues. And it starts, we have a bunch of kids who have no place to go, no facilities to get treatment here in Colorado that are being shipped out of state. So we are building facilities here in Colorado so that we can take care of our own kids here in Colorado, and that will make a big difference. But we still have a long way to go, and we have got to stop using our jails and our prisons as the de facto mental health care setting, because it doesn't make us safer. Because all those people who go to jail get out, and then they are back on the street because they haven't had their underlying health issues addressed. And so I just want you to know that I'm going to work every day on that particular issue, because that is a big deal for me and for my family. And I get contacted every week by families across Colorado who are desperate for us to make a change to this system and to get people off the street and to get their loved ones into care.
Quick follow-up to that. First of all, Judy really is a true leader in our state in mental health issues. She has the expertise from her family background, and it's been invaluable to all of us to work with you on mental health. So I commend you on that very much. I just want to add to the homelessness question. Besides dealing with all of the complex issues around that are facing many of our homeless, we also have what is happening with affordable housing, because people can, even if they're ready to be into a more permanent housing situation, we don't have it. So as chair of Senate Local Government and Housing, we are trying to look at it from many different aspects, and Representative Amabile and I are looking at the ADU type of housing, accessory dwelling unit. We're working with the governor's office on that. The governor put out, you may have heard it recently this week, and I believe President Fenberg will be working on that. How can we use our transit-oriented, how can we put more housing in transit-oriented areas so that we can combine having housing, transit, we don't have as much emissions, and it's easier for commuting. One of the areas I'm looking at is how can we keep families together? In 2013 in Longmont, a huge Latino community that I represent and am a part of had their housing wiped out by the floods, and those families had to separate. So what can we do to keep families together? Because that helps with childcare for those people that can work at home. That gives them the ability, and it helps with our senior community now that would like to downsize and be closer with families. So just so you know, we are looking at all of those issues that impact housing and trying to address homelessness in those ways.
Wanted to end.
Judy Joseph.
Thank you. I just wanted to
Take
add.
it away, Judy.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add to all the answers that I've heard. And thank you for bringing that question forward. For sure, it is mental health, mental and behavioral health infrastructure. We need to build those infrastructure, and I will do whatever I can at the state capitol to support my other colleagues who are working in that front. And also, I think one of the thoughts that was mentioned earlier, it's early childhood, right? A lot of the issues that we see in our society, they are byproducts of the fact that we don't pay families enough. We don't pay working people enough. We don't do enough work when it comes to early childhood education, and we have to do that. But more importantly, as I was hearing and reflecting on some of what my colleagues were saying, just like we can't build prisons to take care of our criminal justice system, building infrastructure itself is not enough. We have to take care of those who work in that field. It pains me when I see those who work in the mental health care system and those who work in the healthcare system, that they have to go on the picket line to get paid. That is not fair. We have to do more as a society. We have to do more as a legislator to ensure that those who are working in that field, that they too are taken care of. Because ultimately, until we know that those who are working in that field are properly supported, it is unlikely that they will be able to help our families and our friends or neighbors who are in that system. So yes, I agree with all my colleagues that housing, mental and behavioral health infrastructure, early childhood support, and also making sure that we take care of those people, men and women who are working in that field, in the mental health space field. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. And once again, whoever feels moved by this question is welcome to answer it. What are your thoughts on the proposed legislation to tax short-term rentals as commercial properties?
I mean, you could try it, but go down, I mean, maybe we can all give a little brief answer on this. I think it's a super complicated problem. And the bill that we voted on in Ledge Council, I voted yes to advance that bill, but the purpose of Ledge Council is to determine whether the bill fits under the scope of the committee that it came from, and it did. But I have serious concerns about the proposal, and I think it really needs more work. It's not quite ready to go. I do think there is a good idea there, but we have to be extremely careful about not punishing people who, you know, for example, have owned a cabin in Estes that they got handed down from their family, and they want to be able to rent it some of the time and then use it some of the time. And I don't think in this day, right now, in this moment of time, that we want to triple their property tax burden, which is what the bill as proposed would do. So.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'll need to see language related to this. You know, I know that a lot of cities, both in the Front Range as well as in the mountains, have been looking at the impact that short-term rentals are having on affordable housing. I think to Representative Malwa's point, that's really where the interest in this kind of a bill is coming from. What is the impact that short-term rentals are having? Cities like Louisville don't allow them. So other cities allow them. Some cities register them, like Lafayette does. So it's something that, like, you know, thinking about what local communities are seeing in terms of its effect on affordable housing, I think will have a big impact on how I perceive a bill like that. So I'll be interested to see kind of as this bill moves forward what the language looks like.
Guess maybe we'll all say a word or two. It'll obviously come before this. If it makes it to the Senate, I don't know where it's starting. Is it starting in the House? Do we know where it's starting? Oh, it's Senate. Okay, so we'll see it in the Local Government Housing Committee that I chair. I think one of there's an underlying principle that's going on here. And part of it is many venture capitalists are investing in properties that are short-term rentals, and that is it's contributing to this, what's happening with affordable housing. And we did pass a bill out of the Senate and the House and sent it to the governor's desk. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it quite out of the governor's desk, but it was a right of first refusal for taking multi-unit housing and having nonprofits and local governments be able to offer that up as affordable housing. That bill is coming back. We are working with the governor's office to try to figure out how we can put it in a form that he can get on board with us. But the reason why we're doing that is because, again, of venture capitalists that are buying up these properties and taking them away from affordable housing. So the reason why I'm describing that with this question is because that's some of the underlying problems that are contributing to the lack of affordable housing with the short-term rental. So we'll see. If you're supportive of what we're doing, please let us know.
Just real quick, I would just say, I think something needs to be done. I don't know exactly what the right policy approach is, but at the end of the day, these are local land use and, decisions. And I think many, as Kyle said, many cities and towns have embraced that and they've regulated them. Others have been hands off. But the state has a role to play when it comes to classifying properties for property tax purposes. And if, there are some towns up in the mountains that have just been overrun by short-term rentals. They just don't have housing stock available anymore for people who live there. They're all being turned into short-term rentals and largely being bought up by investors. And that's just transformed the community. So then the question is, well, what do you do about that? Because these are all taxed as a home, which is taxed at about 7%. And the hotel down the street, which serves essentially the same purpose, is taxed at 29%. So why would anyone build a hotel in these places if you can just buy 12 homes and rent them out and maybe even make more money? And so that's the policy question. How do you treat a residential home that is essentially being used as a commercial property because it's having negative impacts on the community and the tax base and all of that? So that's the question, just to clarify why this is coming about. It's not because we're just a bunch of Democrats that want to increase taxes. Sometimes we do, but there is a real question that I think we're being faced with that is a new issue that frankly we didn't face 10 years ago as much, just because it's become such a commodity in Colorado for investors to buy up these single family homes.
Thank you all. And we also have Junie Joseph who would like to weigh in on this question.
Thank you. I mean, after I heard from our Senate president, I'm wondering if there's much more to add to it. I agree with everything that I just heard, but one thing that I wanted to add as a former city council person is that we need to bring city councils and community members as part of that conversation. Yes, we know that short-term rental actually increase the price of housing and make it harder for community members to get access to affordable housing. I am an affordable housing proponent since 2019, and I will continue to support affordable housing. But I think as well, we need to have the right stakeholders at the table. We cannot just legislate at the Capitol and not bring city councils from around the state to the table to have that conversation as well. So I agree that we need to do the work, but also bring the right stakeholders to be part of the conversation. And I will continue to support affordable housing. Thank you.
Right, we've reached the end of our room rental. And so we need to say happy holidays to all of you and thank you once again for sharing your time with us and to answer all these questions. I'd like to thank all of you out there for coming out today. And I'd like to say, we'll see you again in January, but we really won't. We'll see you on Zoom in January. Yes. Yes, as Dita reminds you, please do sign the petition. And happy holidays. It's been great to have you here today. Let's have a wonderful 2024. Bye-bye.